Greetings and welcome back once again. This is Amuna, and you don't know already. I pray everybody is doing well. As you see on the screen, we're going to talk a little bit about destiny exchange and destiny swapping. This has been on my mind for quite some time, and I've been doing some research and seeing some interesting takes. And so, as you see here, we have some type of figures that would resonate with the general population because this is a story oftentimes when we hear sell your soul, when we hear people talking about this sacrifice that people often make, it's for this destiny swap. Now, isn't it? It's for this whole thought of destiny swap. And I began to think, well, is this biblical? Because again, people are going to be coming from it all from different perspectives. And indeed, this series, because it's going to be a series, I'm going to have to take my time on this one, is going to look at all of the different ways that we see what happens and continues to happen in Hollywood as this prime example of today's space and time. We're going to see how the principles were laid out in the Bible, laid out in the Torah for us to learn and understand from, right? So as we go forward, destiny, I wanted to look it up. The events that will necessarily happen to a particular person or thing in the future. There's so much there that I can go into, but I'm not going to right now. I'm just going to take the Latin that says to make firm or establish. So basically, this destiny, this event that will happen to people in the future, it can be swapped out for exchange or stolen. Now, I don't think they're one and the same as I begin to really think about it and break it down. Swapping and exchangings are similar, but stolen is something different, right? So again, swapping is to take part in an exchange. That means the individual is taking part. Now, the issue comes in whether it's willingly or unwillingly, knowingly or unknowingly taking part. But this swap that exists, if it's a destiny swap, the person is taking part of it. And we see some of that destiny swapping happening in many instances in the Bible. But for this one, we're going to have to start off with Adam and Eve. Because as I started to think about it, I'm like, I have to get into my Bible study mode. I was like, you know what? The first swap, and many people have said it, was in Genesis. So let's look at the principles that existed in Genesis so that we can understand how this whole thing went down. What I find interesting about a lot of people who get caught up in the Hollywood situation, that there may be a lot of people that came from biblical backgrounds, but they were like, them no on that, right? They wanted the glitz and the glamour, and so they forsook certain wisdom and certain understanding and then fell into that same trap, right? So speaking about destiny is like what was set up for this person? What did the creator intend for this person? So in the case of Adam and Eve, because I'm asserting that this was one of the first destiny swaps, right, that was laid on record, right, that we know of in the biblical context, then we see here that there was a place talked about, that there was a midst of the garden, and there was a garden in the midst that was the Garden of Eden. And then we see purpose. We see that the man was formed. We see how it's saying he was formed, and we say that this man is a living being. So anything that the creator makes as we look into creation has a purpose, okay? So that's the first thing that has to do with destiny. We have to understand what our purpose is. If we don't understand what our purpose is, will we truly understand our destiny or what is destined for us? Not so much, right? There's a lot of people who go in, and I'm going to keep tying in the Hollywood aspect because it's the closest thing for us to really understand, right? There's a lot of people who always wanted to be an entertainer, and they always wanted to be in the spotlight. That may come because they're missing something in their childhood, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that you're supposed to be on a stage and compromise your integrity so that you can, some people, the reason they want to do this is monetary. So some people exchange their destiny. Some people destiny swap for material possessions, for attention, for accolades. Let's continue. So it says the creator planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there he put the man whom he formed. So not only did he give the person life, he also put a place where the man is now supposed to function, right? But we're looking at this for the purposes of, I'm gonna, where's the destiny swap? We gonna get there. And out of the ground made the Most High to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food. Now, this word, without getting too deep, is kamad, this pleasant word that means desirable, right? It's something that was desirable to see. There's a lot of times that people are willing to swap their destinies for what they see. Like, you think it's good on the inside. You think that person is dressed to the nines. You think that person is living a good life. You see their Instagram. You see their Riz. You see all of their shoes and all of their cars and all of their clothes. And you're like, ooh, it was pleasant to the eyes, right? And good for food in this particular case, something that you want, that you can reason to yourself, I don't want to just get it because I'm watching other people things. It's good. It would be good for me too, right? The tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Now, again, there's so many lessons to be learned here, but just know that everything you needed in this was there. Everything that they needed was there, but there were certain things that were there that were off limits. Just because something is your destiny doesn't mean everything is a green light go, right? There are some things within that destiny that the Creator may have for us, that life has laid out for us. There's some places that we're not supposed to go. There's some things that we're not supposed to entertain, even though we can see it. Even though it's something that is tangible, even though it's maybe something or someone, people, places, things, the reality is just because it's there doesn't mean it's there or good for you, right? And so a lot of people end up exchanging their destiny and swapping their destiny because we assume that because something is within our proximity, then it is good for us. Genesis 2 and 15. And the Creator took the man and put him in the garden of the east to dress it and keep it. So the scribes who scribed this part of Genesis is letting us know the layout, letting us know the background, the demographic, what was really popping before Adam and Eve ultimately goes into this space. Everything that was supposed to be there is there. So some of the lessons that we can learn is just because we can see it and it may look good, meaning the tree of knowledge of good and evil, doesn't mean that it's good for you. 16, and the Creator commanded the man, saying, of every tree of the garden you may eat. So within our destiny, we're also learning their rules and regulations. There's some people who want a free ball. I do whatever I want, YOLO, whenever I want, however I want, and it's all supposed to be good at all times. This is missing the reality of that's not how things work. That's not how we're seeing it work in Genesis. Oh, the birds are wilding in the background right now. That's not how we see it working in real life, right? So people may go into, like, you see some Hollywood stars, and I'm doing quote, okay, say they go into places and everything is there, right? And I don't want to get ahead of myself, but they have to say no to the liquor. They have to say no to that individual. They have to say no to the places and things, because even though it's there, everything else, quote, you may eat freely of, but that right there, just leave that alone. Just leave that alone. So, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day you eat of it, you shall surely die. Okay, so the way the scribes wrote it was like everything is here, but this it's like that right there, leave that alone. And there's something that goes on within the individual in the human experience that doesn't want to leave things that are not for them alone. And this is, again, we're talking about destiny swapping and destiny exchange and how it happens and how it continues to happen. This is not just a story of Adam and Eve. Again, this series is going to be the different ways in which it happens, because although they have similar principles, maybe it doesn't always happen in a certain order that we're looking for, or maybe we're just not aware of the principles and the way in which it happens. So you have things that are off limits, you have this promised, but you also see in the Hollywood spaces, the minute they promise you the stars, promise to make you a star, what happens? Now they start inviting you to parties. We read this in the Bob Marley narrative, right? We read this in Rita's book. We read this in Sedella's book. What happens now? They start inviting you to the parties to make you aware of the things you're not supposed to consume, right? Have a little liquor, have a pill, have some this, have some that. And next thing you know, you're eating of this. And then what they said, nothing not got to you, man. Where you worry about? You just relax yourself, man. Learn how to calm down, man. Have a drink, man. Now we're hearing about these parties that's in the news, right? How a lot of people got sucked up into this, becoming victimized, right? Because they came into certain spaces expecting that the promises that they were given were going to be made good on, and then they were plied with things that would compromise their integrity, much like eating in this case of the tree of knowledge and good and evil. But let's continue. So Genesis 3 says there was something there. Some people are going to argue whether it was a snake, whether it was a serpent, whether it was an angel. We're not here for that. We're just here to understand that there's something there. There is another entity that's there. There's something that has a point of view that we may not have. There's something spiritual that's going on that is able to understand that you're a newbie, you're green, you fresh meat. You get it? You see that happen to people who, I just want to make it because I just want to make my parents proud and I want to make people laugh, and they're fresh faced and they bushy tailed and they're in there. And the people who are there, the predators who are there, what happened? They look at you as fresh meat. So now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Creator had made. And he said unto the woman, yea, has the Creator said you shall not eat of every tree of the garden? Questioning your thought process. Remember, we're talking about destiny swapping, right? So it comes in all different forms. In this particular case, it comes in a form of something nefarious outside of the individual, some type of entity, some type of energy who wants to capture the soul. And so then it comes in this form of questioning the boundaries. If you met a dude, if the dude met a woman, if you met a new teacher, or you met a new guru, or you went to a party, and it's questioning boundaries. Oh, you say you don't drink? Oh, what you think is gonna happen to you? Oh, you never had this before? Questioning these boundaries, making you begin to question yourself. Remember, today I'm not talking about necessarily stolen, because this exchange, this swapping had to do with some willingness to engage, right? And so the woman said that means she was willing to engage. She's having this conversation. She didn't just walk away, slam the door in his face, hung up the phone. She engaged. So in sales, they try to keep you on the line, right? Because if they can engage you, at some point, they're going to find your pain point. They're going to be able to wiggle right on in there, just like the serpent is wiggling right on in there, right? So it says, and the woman said unto the serpent, we may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, the Creator said, ye shall not eat, neither shall you touch it, lest ye die. Now, again, to go deep into this, but not so deep, according to this particular narrative, there was a commandment added. And if you read your Bible later on in the Torah, it says, do not add or take away from. It does not say, neither ye shall you touch it, right? If we go back, and we shall go back, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you shall not eat of it, for in the day that you eat thereof, you shall surely die. So when she responds to the serpent, right? When you respond to the person, and in your ignorance or in your naivete or in our just not knowing what we don't know, we create a space, a gap by which they can enter, because maybe we knew the information, but we really didn't know it. We were parroting it. We were mimicking what was told to us, right? And so because they have a little bit more understanding and they're on a different level, they can refute what you're saying. Nah, who said you can't touch it? You wildin'. You know what I'm saying? Who told you that that was going to happen? Psh, I do that all the time and nothing happens to me. You get me? So in this particular case, she added in, according to the scribes, neither shall you touch it. But as we just read, touch is not in the command. It says, neither shall you eat of it, for in the day you eat of it. And I know it seems small, but again, if you ever saw how you got finessed when you went to a car dealership, or when you went to a location, or think about a time when you got finessed in your life, and go back to that time and think about the conversation. Was it an older person? Were you the naive one? Were you the smaller one in that particular situation? If you really think about how did you get taken advantage of, if at some point you willingly said, oh, okay, What arguments did they present that made you concede and agree to their point of view? Right. So anyway, she added on according to the text, and it says, "But the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, the Creator said, you should not eat, neither shall you touch, lest you perish," right? Lest you die. Okay. So now we're gonna go on, and I'm missing four. I'm missing four. So let me go ahead and read four right quick. Genesis 3 and 4 says, "And the serpent said unto the woman, you shall not surely die." False assurity. How do people willingly exchange or reluctantly exchange their destinies in this particular case? False assurance. Someone assuring you that nothing got to your man. You can't go and do that. Nothing got. You, for some reason or the X, feel that you can trust this individual, and or it's because it's something that you want. Oftentimes, and I forgot to speak about this earlier, it is the desire. Actually, I did, but I didn't go all the way in. It is our internal desire that the person is working off of. If you didn't desire a car, you wouldn't be at the car dealership. So even if they sent you $2,000 off when you come in today, some desire in you, whether you wanted the car, whether you didn't have the money and you wanted the $2,000 off, whatever it is, whatever brought you to that space is the desire that they're going to then use to work with, right? So he's like, nah, you afraid of dying? Dying? My girl. He's like, no, 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 don't worry about that. You shall surely not die. You understand? So false assurance. Now you go into these places and maybe the people are coming out of the church and they're coming out of their spaces of religion and confinement. And so the first thing they have to do is remove these barriers, remove these things, remove your apprehension, right? And falsely assure you that ain't nothing gonna happen. Look around. Right? So let's continue. "And when the woman saw, once again, with the eyes, that the tree was good for food and that it was pleasant to the eyes." Remember, we just read in the beginning that the Creator made it pleasant. Let me go back because sometimes we could forget. In Genesis 2 and 9, "And out of the ground made the Creator to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight." So this whole "when she saw it was pleasant," it's nothing new. It was made to be pleasant. You ever see some trees, fruit trees, beautiful or trees, ornamental trees? They're made to be pleasant to the eyes, beautiful, right? And a tree to be desired to make one wise. So her seeing it being pleasant wasn't the thing. It was what she desired it for. It just told you, desired to make one wise. Why? Because it was a tree of knowledge and good and evil. So people end up on the casting couch. People end up in these different compromising positions because beyond that is what they want. Beyond that is the role. Beyond that is the status. Beyond that is the house. Beyond that is the record deal. Beyond that is the man. Beyond that is whatever the person feels that they want. So they short term, there's a short circuit on the now. They block out what is going to be done now because ultimately they want what is beyond that. And so they're trading their future, which we saw destiny. They're trading their destiny, the individual in this case, Eve is doing it. She's listening to outside sources, but she is exchanging, right? Her destiny for what it is she wants. And what does she want? The tree that was desired to make one wise. She took of the fruit thereof and did eat, and gave also unto her husband with her and did eat. And I know this could be a whole nother conversation, right? I'm not going down that rabbit hole. But we see here how people find themselves, how we the people, how humanity continually. People be like, oh, I don't believe what. Take the principle. Take the principle of what it's saying because we see it happen today. Right now, today, we're seeing a prominent hip hop figure from the time I've been seeing BET, 106 in Park. I mean, I saw the whole trajectory and the fall. And how did he convince all of these people to come into his layer so that he can suck their energy, transfer their destiny, right? And then live in this lap of luxury. He followed a certain formula. Everybody who comes out, for the most part, from it, be Cassie to all of these people that come out, there was a formula. This person promised me that they was going to give me a record deal. This person invited me to their parties. This person told me to, not me, them, to take a drink. Nothing's going to happen. Relax. Enjoy yourself. It's going to be all good. Don't worry. We'll get to that album. We'll get to that record. We'll get to that. It's the same formula. It has not changed, because Solomon said it's nothing new under the sun. And if it ain't broke, why are you trying to fix it? Right? And the reality is, every person who went in that door did not get what was promised. And if they did, it was on a string. And the moment they got it in their hand and thought it was all good, it was pulled back. But let me continue. And the eyes of them both were open, and they saw that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves apron. When the person signs that record deal, when they compromise themselves and go into that Instagram, what do you call it, influencer's house. There was one lady who went into an influencer's house, who the influencer was always on Instagram, and had this it was a European one. I forgot her name right now. And she finessed the snot out of this lady. Like, she started to make this lady into her servant slash slave. Why? Because their eyes were open. That once you go beyond this false promise and you get into this space, you get into the elite group, you get into the radio station, you get on the record company, you go into this movie house, your eyes are opened. And they were naked. What happens when you're naked? You become vulnerable. You realize, oh, snap, I'm vulnerable. So they sold fig leaves. On some people, they sold personas now. They put a straw man between you and them. They try to make up all of these things so that, why? So that they can protect the fact that they are naked. So people will come and do a million interviews and tell you everything is good. Everything is okay. There's nothing to worry about. And watch as more and more victims enter the burning building. That's the injustice. Because why? Those people are naked, and now they feel as though they don't have the power. They don't have the will to warn people before they come into this house. And really, when the people get in there, now it's a whole Me Too kind of conversation. But I'm going to continue. Remember, we're talking about destiny exchange, and this is, if not the first, as we read in the text, destiny exchange and swapping. So Genesis 3:12 and 14 says, and the man said, the woman whom you gave me, she gave me of the tree, and I did eat. Now, I could go all day on this. I've done conversations on this before, but there's going to come blame now. The person who saw you ate it, the person who went in there as your personal assistant, because I'm using Hollywood here, the person who went in there as your manager, the person who now saw you ate the fruit, you signed the contract, you got the forwarded the advance, you got the new wardrobe, they ate too. You get me? You see a lot of momagers. You see Britney Spears' parents, and you see Macaulay Culkin's parents, and even you see Brandy's parents, and Ray J's parents, and Bow Wow's parents, and all of these people in Hollywood, because we're using this as an example, right? It's a perfect example. And then they were there. They watched you do it, and it looked good, and they ate too. So because the person who was there, they were like, "Ooh, everything gone through. All right, sound good to me." Let me go forward. I'm not trying to stay too long. And the creator said unto the woman, what is this you have done? Like, bro, didn't you hear the rule? Didn't you hear what I told you? Didn't you hear that everything else was yours? You were good. You had what you needed. What in the world? And then she looked to blame. So the man looked to blame. Now the serpent, the person who's beguiling you, the person who is the exact, it wasn't me. You understand what I'm saying? It was the other person, this management. It's not me. So she says, the serpent beguiled me and I did eat. Like, yeah, I ate, but I didn't know it was a 360 deal. Yeah, I ate, but I didn't read the fine print. Yeah, I ate, but they lied to me. They told me X, Y, and Z. And the creator said unto the serpent, because you have done this, you are cursed above all cattle and above every beast of the field. Upon the belly you shall go, and dust you shall eat all the days of your life. So in this particular case, nobody gets out scot-free, right? Everybody's going to get what is coming to them based on the fact that they engaged in this type of activity. And it says, Concern the woman, the creator says he'll put enmity between your seed and the seed and her seed, meaning the serpent. It shall bruise your head and you shall bruise his heel. Unto the woman he said he will greatly multiply your sorrow and your conception, and you in sorrow you shall bring forth children, and that thy desires shall be to your husband, and he shall rule over thee. Again, that's like a whole nother long conversation. That's not the conversation we have in today. So again, we see that the destiny has changed. What was intended for you, what was firmly established for you, has changed based on your choices. So I say all that to say that choices, not necessarily choices that we make, whether we are aware or unaware, can and do play a role in exchanging and swapping our destinies. And it's not always swapping your destiny for someone else. Like stolen destiny is something different. This is swapping your destiny for the other, or the other door, the other alternative. It's not that someone else now is there living your Garden of Eden life, because we know that it says that there was flaming swords and you blocked from going in. So not somebody else living your life, you're blocked from living the life that you were supposed to based on your particular choices. Okay. Why is dude looking like this? And on to Adam, he says, because you have hearkened unto the voice of your wife, and have eaten of the tree of which I commanded thee, saying, you shall not eat of it, curses the ground for your sake, in sorrow shall you eat all the days of your life. So, one time I studied so diligently on this, and saw that the communication, which even today you have family therapists and relationship therapists, the communication between the man and the woman was compromised, because it says, because you hearkened onto her voice. Right. So oftentimes in relationships, some of the men just hate the voice, the nagging, the concerns of the wife, right? Why? Because there seems to be some type of blockage between what she's saying. Like she could be saying the same thing the homeboys are saying, but because she's saying it, he feels agitated. He feels irritated. And there's something in here that the relationship between the masculine and feminine was compromised through this whole destiny swap and switch type of situation, right? But we'll continue. That's for another day. So again, it goes on to say that thorns and thistles, and by the sweat of your brow you shall eat bread, right? He looked kind of enjoyable. He's over here farming kale. You understand what I'm saying? But what I'm saying essentially in this particular part is that the what was intended was changed based on disobedience. So destinies can be swapped for the there's like good, better, best version. You can get the subpar version based on the choices. Like you could have had the elite model, but now you got to get the basic version, and you got to wind down the window because X, Y, and Z. You understand? And so lastly, just to recap, biblical destiny swap. This is Adam and Eve. We're going to go into other people, because I think it is helpful going forward. We're going to go into Judah and Tamar, Leah and Jacob. We're going to go into a whole lot of people. But the first one that I was seeing here is that there was a clear path of what was intended for them, right? There was clear instruction, what they were supposed to do versus what they were not supposed to do. There was a desire on the behalf of the woman and on behalf of the man, right? He desired his woman, because before that, when she was made, he said, flesh of my flesh, bone of my bones, right? She shall be called woman, because she came from man. So he had a desire towards her, and she, in this case, had a desire to grow wise. So desire also played in, and the serpent definitely had a desire as well. So desire is also in it when we're looking at how destiny swaps may take place in our lives. Like, what's in it for you? You have to ask that question. What is in it for you? Opportunity is also something that is within a destiny swap. The opportunity has to present itself. The serpent had the opportunity to talk to Eve. The person that you met had an opportunity to speak into your life, to embed themselves in your life. You created a space when you are able, because sometimes this happens and it's the parents' responsibility and they drop the ball, right? So it doesn't just always happen because the individual is of sound mind and they can make their own decisions. Sometimes this happens on someone else's watch. Number 5 is stepping out of the path. This is for Adam and Eve. They had a clear path. They were going in a specific direction, and they stepped out of that path. There was also a level of deception on behalf of the serpent, right? This is the person or the entity that has a different purview. They're able to understand things that you don't yet understand. And so there's a level of deception and beguile. She actually says the serpent beguiled her because there was a level of deception connected with the conversation. There's a disconnect that happens after the choice, right? So when we're talking about destiny exchange, what there's a disconnect that happens after the choice, or even after the choice is made for you, or even after you unknowingly make the choice. There's a disconnect that happens that we feel deep within our soul. We may not be able to understand it. We may not be able even to understand that it's happening in that moment, but there is a level of disconnect. And then there's a blaming, looking around for who is responsible. Blame has to do with responsibility. Who is responsible for this? I don't, sometimes we don't want to take personal responsibility. And we see that in this particular conversation. It wasn't me, it was her, it wasn't me, it was him, right? So we see that the blame and the judgment went hand in hand because it did not matter that someone may have put you in this particular position. What did you do as it resulted, as it relates to it? And so ultimately, yes, that is the biblical destiny swap slash exchange for Adam and Eve. And hopefully that was helpful. It was helpful for me as I continued to go over it because, it came to my mind like, hey now, hey now. You know what I mean? This story is repeating. I'm listening to all of these reports on the victims and R. Kelly victims and Diddy victims and Hollywood, and how people get sucked in and what they say was their mind state before they entered, right? In the case of Raven Simone, and you hear her say when she was little, she saw her parents and she saw her mother looking and leaning into, the Cosby Show. And she's saying to her mother at 4, 3, 2, Mom, I can do that. So that means that that child wants the attention. That child wants the accolades. That child wants your energy. And if this is the way in which they're going to get it, then they're going to go and do that. So if you look at some and of why some of these young people, and they're usually very young, go into these spaces where they unknowingly or knowingly exchange their destinies for resources, money, attention, accolades, stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, when they realize that it's not worth it and that they realize that they were naked, right? They try to cover it. Let me see. And the eyes of them were both open and they knew were they naked, and they try to cover it with things, with possession, with bling, with all of these things. But it is for us, the viewer, to also understand that there are some principles at play here, and that if we extract those principles, not only can we apply them to our lives, we can help apply them to others. So with that said, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. This is Amuna, and stay tuned for part 2. I know this is a little bit different, research, but it is research nonetheless. One.